thought it would be fun. For those of you who don't know us, welcome. I'm Angela,
And I'm Caitlin Brady. Hello.
and we each do podcasts. So you're on the Architecting channel. Architecting is my podcast.
And I have a podcast called Architectette, which features women in AEC.
So we have had some really great chats. In fact, stay tuned because we did a podcast swap. So episode one is, or part one, I guess I should say, is Caitlin interviewing, or me interviewing Caitlin for
Oh no,
our,
I think, yeah, if mine comes out first. So
that's right, that's right.
my interview of you, which I think we recorded in the opposite direction. But yeah, your episode on Architectette comes out this Monday, October 6th at 5 a.m. if you are up early enough on the East Coast to listen to it as soon as it drops.
And then shortly thereafter in the same week, part two, which is on architecting, which is my interview of Caitlin,
Mhm.
will be airing. So there's a little bit of a continuation there. So you want to make sure you catch both episodes. But we really enjoyed talking about the state of the profession and issues that architects face. So we thought we might experiment with a live, see how it goes, and play around a little bit with the idea of interacting with all of you and having some really raw conversations about things that are bugging us.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. So thanks for suggesting this. And I'm excited. This is my first live stream. So I'm used to a lot of Zooming and Teams calling, but this is a little bit different. So I'm excited.
Yeah, so I think for this one, we were going to talk a little bit about kind of the state of the profession and things that are going on. So I have been in conference mode. I went to two conferences in two different locations in 2 weeks, and I've got three more coming up.
Wow.
But
That's a lot.
one, it is a lot. Yeah, they all kind of like to cluster together. But one of the things that I noticed going to these conferences and reconnecting with people is how many people right now are moving around. A lot of people I know who've worked at institutions are leaving those institutions to go to the private sector,
Mm,
which is a little scary because it probably means that things may be worse than we even know for our institutional clients. And that's causing people to look for better opportunities. But I've also seen people completely quit jobs and just be like, I am done. I saw a colleague who I'm hoping to interview, so I won't give too much detail unless she wants to be on the show.
hmm
But she was a partner at a big firm and decided she just wanted to leave. And I give her a lot of credit for bravery that she didn't have something lined up first. She just said,
Wow.
I can't do this anymore. It's time to go.
hmm
And I know I often fantasize about retiring from practice too. And
Yeah.
it's not that I am going to sit around and join the garden club and play bridge. It's that practice, it's not the firm, it's the practice has gotten to be really frustrating. Like,
Mm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's a lot to unpack there. I think I too am on the conference swing coming up. I think at the end of October, going into November, I have two back-to-back conferences in Atlanta. So I go down, I come back, I go back down again, I come back. But I think geographically, I'm based in the DC area. So this has been a highly tumultuous year for everyone in the DC area. There's just a government shutdown. Maybe some people have heard. There's been a lot of layoffs, firings. A lot of people have lost their jobs. And so I have not lived in DC for that long. I moved in 2023. So folks that have been here a lot longer have talked about how insulated DC typically is from a lot of these market conditions just because of all the government work, where the government has always been a little bit more stable in terms of projects and keeping people employed. And that is not the case anymore. So I too have seen a lot of people changing jobs, but it's not that optimistic, or I guess not changing jobs, but leaving jobs. And from what I've been hearing, the DC area, it's not very optimistic. I haven't had a lot of friends leave and go somewhere else. It's more of just like a layoff or something like that, that at least in architecture. And then, of course, there's all of those other sectors which have been impacted. But it's not looking so bright here. It's a little bit gloomy now, so it's good to hear that maybe other parts of the country aren't as impacted as significantly as this region, but it's been for sure a tough year for people in all different types of industries, architecture included.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also just the volatility in the market is tough.
Mhm.
We're seeing a lot of projects that should have been close to budget come in wildly over budget,
Mhm.
and having to make scope cuts to a point where it's not the same project any longer. And it's a little bit of a crisis of conscience for me. I'm sure it is for others when you're taking things out that your design process showed would have really been a game changer
Mm.
for a department or a client. And it's the only way to make the project happen is to give them something that is marginally better, the same than what they have today. And you're like, well, this isn't the point of what we're doing, right? And we're
Mhm.
still spending a huge amount of money to do the project at all. And while there are some things we're getting, there's a lot of trade-offs that you kind of go, like I kind of made the analogy, like, if you were dating someone and they were promising you certain things and then they were suddenly like, yeah, I just don't want to get married ever or have kids ever. And I want to move to a different city and just do a long distance relationship and just all these, we'll call them scope cuts to what you thought was the relationship you wanted and were
Yeah.
getting. And it was like, well, if you break up with me, then you won't have anyone.
Hmm.
Like it's like, who would say, yeah, oh, hold on to him?
Hmm. Yeah. So when you experience these things on projects, is it a conversation of like ethically, do we even proceed with this if we're not bringing a value add to the client, or are we advising them to, I mean, it's not like prices are going to go down probably. But like what can you advise the clients to do of reduce scope and then deepen the impact of that reduced scope? Or is it just proceed, try to make it work, and the client knows what they're getting, even though it's not really what they imagined initially?
Well, we try, right? We try to say, well, how could we be smart about this? What ways could we think out of the box? What could we do? And sometimes the client's willing to do that. Other times they're not willing to entertain it because they're sort of locked into something and their thinking is more, what can we get for X amount of money, as opposed to how do we maximize meeting the needs,
Mm.
as creatively as possible. So I think, we're still in a world where clients, especially institutional clients, are very risk adverse. And unfortunately, it makes everybody focus on first cost, not on long-term value, or whether over the long term, we're maybe spending a lot more money to do an alternative solution, but do something stopgap in between. But they don't have the ability to go back and get more money.
Mm. And so at that point, is the project's already underway in terms of architecture, and have you ever stopped and said, "Hey, we need to do maybe like a planning study"? Because I know we see that in higher education, where depending on the market fluctuations, sometimes architecture is a lot more popular. Sometimes it's more of like our planning studio, which they're doing a lot more studies. A lot of colleges, universities are gathering data, understanding kind of what resources they have, and then down the line is when they start to build those projects.
I'd say a little bit of both.
Hmm.
Like in some cases, things are going on hold because it makes sense to wait and do the right project when it can be done the right way. Other times it's saying, maybe we don't need this, or maybe we could meet this need in a different way. So that can be kind of fun too. And the other thing I'm seeing, I'm working on a project now that I'm calling a micro project. So it was always supposed to be renovation of a floor plate, but the initial scope was a complete gut and reno of this floor plate.
Okay.
And now it's like, what's the least amount we can do today? And the fun of it, though, is it's saying, how do we do this in a way that is scalable? So we don't build anything that we're going to have to rip out tomorrow. So we're doing things that make sense to do and we're right sizing it.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it also is really challenging a lot of assumptions about what people think they need in space. And so it's kind of fun to do that and say, what's the micro project? And I have a feeling that we're going to be doing a lot of micro projects over the next few years where something needs to be done, but we just aren't going to have the budgets to do what we would have done in the past.
Mm-hmm. This might be a hot take, but I love projects like that because I think if I get a project where it's just a clean piece of earth and build a tower, build a building, I'm almost paralyzed with the opportunities of what could go there. What could it be? Whereas I love the creative thinking and the challenge behind renovation or adaptive reuse, where we have the bones of something that's already there. Maybe it's great, maybe it's not, but we're going to totally transform it. And I think the sustainability aspect is really interesting too, the preserving historical context and neighborhood context, and just maybe even adding on or transforming what's already there. I think those projects are super interesting. And like you said, probably are, it's, we can only build so much, right? Then we're going to have to start repurposing our existing stock of things. We're already seeing a lot of projects. I was just on a ULI call where we were looking at, it was an office building that has become condos, which we're seeing a lot of that, right? Like corporations aren't renting as much. We have these big empty buildings. How do we repurpose them into something that's useful to the people today? Which maybe in 50 years, we won't need any more condos, which we do have a lot of condos. But I just think those projects are so interesting of working with an existing framework and then being really, really creative within that box.
Yeah, and it's definitely more sustainable. It's more responsible. It makes you think more around the guts of what you're building that 100-year building, not the 20-year building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, building practices aren't the same as they used to be, so sometimes our buildings aren't even, not coming anywhere close to the just substantial nature of those 100-year buildings. But I worked on a project, the Catholic University School of Nursing, and that was one very modern building. And those spaces had to be. It's not like we could cram those state-of-the-art labs, simulation spaces, all of that into like an existing building. It kind of had to be a new space just because technology is so advanced. But the exterior of the building was all a precast system. And so my firm had a partner architect, which we worked together on that. But the stone was salvaged from a church that had been demolished in Philadelphia. So it matched the other buildings on campus. And it was just really cool to see something that, and I forget why it was demolished. I think probably like developers or something, more condos, right? But people were able to save that. And then it was be able to, it was used again. Probably someone made a profit off of that salvage, which is, I think, very worth it, rather than just putting it back in the ground. But being able to reuse that building material on a brand new building and then make it feel old and lived in because of that natural resource that we were able to repurpose.
Yeah, and I do think when we are in times of disruption where what we've been doing is suddenly not working, it
Mhm.
becomes more risky to try to maintain the status quo than it does to make a change. we certainly saw this in COVID times, right? You simply couldn't have office work as usual. Healthcare was interrupted, education was interrupted, and things that people would have sworn up and down you could not do and would not work, all of a sudden did work. They had to
Mm-hmm.
work. They were the only choice, but it loosened a lot of constraints.
Yeah.
So, in healthcare, telehealth suddenly became much more viable,
Mm-hmm.
and alternative ways to deliver care that people hadn't really been willing to entertain, all of a sudden now they were. And in some cases, those changes have stuck. Certainly, the way we work in office settings have forever been transformed. We're not going back to everybody in the office all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also given us, though, a lot of opportunities. It's created careers nobody even knew existed 5 years ago. So for me, the disruption that we're having now, which is more of one that affects structure. So we're seeing governments, we're seeing religious organizations, we're seeing economic structures, education structures, all kind of disintegrating. They're just not working anymore. But if you think about it, how long have we been saying that things need to change and things aren't sustainable, right? 20, 30 years in some cases. We just reached the tipping point now. And that could feel really scary, like, oh my God, everything is disintegrating, the whole world is falling apart. But what I really see is the opportunity for disruption. Something's going to come in that says, why are we trying to fix what's broken? Why don't we just do something totally new?
Mm-hmm. Mm. I like your optimism. I think I need to lean into that a little bit more on a daily basis. But yeah, I think especially with AI, right? There's so many things that computers can do now for us, right? It could be our tool in proofreading and idea generation and just so many different things. It still can't count how many bees are in the word blueberry or whatever those things are. But I'm thinking too, it's like we were apart for so long during the pandemic. Folks kind of came back together. Now we have this other digital revolution with AI. I think, and I've heard a few people say this online, it's the power of being together in space, I think is going to become even more important. We can connect digitally, but I think we've all learned over this experiment, the last 5+ years, that it's not that, being together online is not the same as being together in person. And so it's like, how are we investing in those spaces? How are schools, programs, hospitals investing in those spaces to make them something truly worthwhile doing in a world where you can connect to someone digitally? What's going to bring people into those spaces? And I think architects are uniquely positioned to kind of bring people through that idea process and kind of imagine what is the next way to gather? And then how are we facilitating those connections with people?
Yeah, because I think where our strength is our ability to create things, to envision the possible. And a
Mhm.
lot of times the possible looks like something no one's ever seen before. AI, the limitation of AI is that it can only be retrospective, right? It has access to the entire Internet of Things,
Mhm.
but those things have already happened. So AI is going to have bias built into it.
Mhm.
AI is going to have problems with equity and diversity because historically that's the information that it has to pull from. It doesn't
Mhm.
have an ability to make judgment calls. And the learning is just simply a way of putting together pieces of information or knowing what to pull when there's a query of it, but it can't create something new.
Mhm.
And so that's where I think humans have a lot of value because that's our strong suit, is that we can create something new.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. I think when I podcast, it's a heavy lift. I have a full-time job. I'm like a real architect, and then I do podcasting at night. And so I have been using it to do, especially like transcript generation, or I'll help it with my show notes. And that's really, but I would never come on as an avatar and let my avatar interview someone. I feel like that personal connection is like the best part. And I'm so excited to do that. I'm so excited to structure the podcast and put together my list of questions and kind of guide people through that process. But then all that other stuff, I'm like, okay, let me outsource so that I can do the fun connecting stuff. But every once in a while, it just is so wrong. I'll drop the transcript in and go, can you please generate show notes based off talking points? It's making up firm names, it's making up degrees and areas of study, or it's combining. What was I doing? Angela, I was doing, I think it was yours. I did a big batch this past weekend. So your episode, a few others that are coming up. And I kept on getting all of these ghost show notes from Pascal Sablon's episode. And it's like her transcript, I worked through the show notes back. I think that was like a June episode. So it's been months. We're in October now. And I'm like, why is this coming up? I couldn't get it to clear. I just had to, I ended up, I think, arguing with it a little bit of like, listen, stop talking about her episode. I need you to just clear your mind. And then, okay, here's the new transcript. Only look at this file. And after a couple tries, I was able to get it to clear the cache or whatever. But it's funny, things like that. You can put it to work, but it is not perfect at all. And you're right.
No.
It's not thinking on its own. It's just trying to like grab something and then help you organize it.
Yeah, because it's kind of scary because the interface feels so human-like, right?
Yeah.
We
Especially
talk,
the voice. I don't know if you've ever talked to
I
it.
haven't
It's
done that,
weird. Yeah.
but we forget that it doesn't actually know what it's doing.
Yes.
It really doesn't have any ability to have a context
Yeah.
or
No
make
sentience.
judgment calls.
Hmm.
But it's interesting because I think it does have a role. And I think for things like data crunching or for pulling together information, it has a lot of value, but the human who's actually putting that critical eye and being discerning and then also being creative with the information, that there's just no replacing.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. So it's AI is nothing without human intervention and human use. And I think that's what makes it powerful is that we can use it as a tool. But when it's used on its own, it's really it's just like a photocopy of something that already existed.
Yeah, although I do wonder, because I'm old enough to have lived before there were things like cell phones and fax machines, even, and certainly before there was the internet. And I would say fax machines and cell phones were just starting to come around when I was in architecture school. They fax more so than anything else.
Mhm.
And at that time, people were talking about how the pace of life had quickened. And then, of course, in the mid 90s, the internet started to really blossom and become robust and a tool that people were really using. And cell phones started to be ubiquitous by the early 20,000s and or 2000s. And, it just has now become a world that somebody, who was alive 30, 40 years ago wouldn't recognize.
Hmm.
The trade-off, though, is the pace of life, because all these things that were supposed to be conveniences and save us time actually are taking our time
Hmm.
away from us. Other things have come in to replace the leisure we thought we were going to have or the quality time we thought we were going to get. So I think that's a really interesting phenomenon that technology and AI is just part of that wave has created. Is it's made people more isolated. It's caused mental health issues because unfortunately with algorithms you are in more and more and more of an echo chamber. So
Mhm.
whatever your personal preferences for anything are, that's all you keep getting.
Mhm.
And especially if it's something you're worried about, you're going to just be fed nothing but scary stuff on that particular topic.
Yes.
And it's hard to get out of that because your search engine has now got this bias because of previous searches. So it's not even doing objective searches for you anymore.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that of like, whoa, so much of this. And it's like, okay, that's a reflection of where I am or what I have looked at, whatever, topic or issue or fashion or place or something. I just came back from Japan. And of course, I had tried to do a little bit of research before I went. But when I was there, I was all of a sudden getting so much content of like, see this, see that. And I'm like, oh, I missed that when I was in Tokyo, or like, oh, I should have gone to like that place when I was in Kyoto. But I guess I should have, tapped into that algorithm before I went. But anyway, yeah, I think with social media, especially as someone who has a podcast, and I'm sure maybe you have opinions on this too, it's interesting to see kind of, I want to grow the podcast. I think it is a valuable hour of your time to listen to a woman in architecture, engineering, construction, design talk about their career path. I think that's like really important for mentorship. I think there's a lot to learn. But then how do I get that out to people? And I'm like, okay, social media. So I need to be present on social media. And the more reflecting I do, the more I'm like, I don't want to be on social media. I love connecting with people. I'm so curious. So like I love that like I feel like I'm learning. But then I realized all of my dopamine has just been like harvest rather than me actually learning too much of anything. So I go back and forth between how much can I be on social media to be part of this podcasting community and women in architecture and like checking in with people that I've met through this platform, and we are friends because of this type of platform. So I think it's given me a lot, but then I have that question too of is this is this really good? The connections are good, but like overall does the bad outweigh the good? And like how much by putting stuff out there, am I also I'm encouraging other people to stay on the platform, right? Like I'm feeding the monster that is also, nipping at my toes. So that's a lot of
Yeah,
thoughts there.
but I agree. And I will say, like, social media for personal use, about the only thing I go on with any consistency is LinkedIn. And that's just because I'm trying to keep up with what people in the industry are doing.
Yeah.
And it's a good way to know if somebody's just published a book or if they're moving jobs or share an idea or an article. Great. Now we
Yeah.
can, keep talking about it. But I think part of the good thing that we all have this platform, we can say what needs to be said and we don't have to answer to anybody. If you
Yeah.
think about it, if you wanted to do something like podcast, even 10 or 12 years ago, somebody would have had to sign you up, and
Mm.
you would either have to have a lot of your own capital to fund it, or somebody would have to say you can be part of our network. And
Mm.
the term radio was often used loosely back then because it wasn't broadcast radio, but it was like private channels and it was basically podcasts. But you couldn't just do that out of your house for free. It
Mhm.
was a thing you had to be part of a bigger network, a bigger group, which meant that somebody had to decide that what you had to say was worth it. You didn't have the agency to just speak for yourself. And so today, with a minimal investment in a podcast host and a good camera or microphone, things like that, you
Mhm.
can suddenly have Architectette, and that's
Yeah.
great. And it lets people hear your voice and the voice of the women that you interview. And you then need to leverage social media because otherwise people don't know about it.
Mhm.
So it becomes this sort of like self-fulfilling kind of a thing where
Mhm. It's a circle. Mhm.
we have more agency than we ever did before, but we're also slaves to giving up all our data to all of these algorithms,
Mhm.
and their algorithms are always changing. I remember in the early days of Twitter, for example, I used to have a lot of business contacts on Twitter, and we would post articles we read that we thought were interesting. And it was this great kind of community. And that can still exist on Twitter. You certainly see it in, communities that will build around a certain subject matter, but it's not the same. It's not the same at all because now people are corrupting the algorithm. They found all kinds of ways to use bots. There's ads like there never were back then. And so things are just very different. And I know even on things like Instagram,
Mhm.
the algorithm changes so much. Like I realized after we had first talked about doing a live that I couldn't do an Instagram live because they've changed it now that you have to have a certain threshold of followers.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't. You know what? I feel like I saw Bryn Young maybe had mentioned that at one point, like, oh, I have enough people I can do a live. Is it 10,000 followers?
Yeah, it's something
Oh,
most of us are probably not
yes.
likely to hit anytime soon.
Yeah.
So then you can't do a live. You
Oh,
know, you're
yes.
cut out
Okay.
from that.
Interesting. Because that was when we were having the tech problems earlier, I was like, yeah, we just hop on there. But yeah, I don't even think I would qualify for that. Oh,
So yeah,
wow.
they
Hmm.
keep changing the algorithms. And what I notice now when I go through my feed is over 50% of what I'm seeing are ads.
Yes.
So it makes it harder to actually keep up with anybody you're following because it's polluted with all these ads.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the AIA keeps advertising to me and it's like, listen, you already have my money. I'm on the local board. I'm very involved, but I think I ended up just saying like, listen, I see this ad all the time. Please stop showing it to me. But yeah, you see that that's the same guy like standing on next to a desk with his arm out. I've seen it 100 times probably, at least.
Although podcasts are interesting, and I know you have a lot of episodes and you've been doing this for a few years now, but if you actually do research, even though it feels like there's so many people doing podcasts, most people who start a podcast never get beyond 7 episodes. There's actually a
Wow.
term pod fade for
Hmm.
that because people just are like, I ran out of steam. I didn't have anything else to say.
Hmm.
So when you have longevity, last week I looked at my dashboard and I was shocked that overnight I had 600 downloads from over 20 different countries around the world. And
Wow.
they were listening to like all these episodes because I have almost 300 that
Hmm.
are available now. So I think there is something to be said when you are a constant presence and you keep reaching out. And I also think the podcasts that are the number one rated are coming from big names and they have money behind them and they have ads on their podcast. And this is a money maker for them. But I recently interviewed someone who is an ex Hollywood executive who
Hmm.
used to make movies. And I said to him, well, how did you find me? And he said, you were recommended to me by some people that I know. And when they recommended people I should reach out to be interviewed by, I asked them, well, why are you not recommending all these big name podcasters? And they
Hmm.
said, well, those people are always trying to sell you something. These smaller podcasts, it's more like you're having a conversation with a friend. If you lived in the same city, you might actually go hang out with this person.
Yep.
And I really appreciated that insight and that compliment because I'm like, yeah, I think that's what we're doing with
Hmm.
our podcasts. And there's a place for that and there's a need for that.
Yes. Yeah. I've talked to a few people who, Catherine Mang has the Design Voice podcast, which I forget when they stopped airing new episodes, but it ran pretty regularly for a few years back. And she was saying too that she gets a lot of like, I don't know, it's kind of like bots or whatever, PR agencies will reach out of like, listen to this, have this person on, this person should, I'm pitching this person and they want to talk about this, that, and the other. And like oftentimes they're very cool people and they've done very cool work. But I would rather just talk to someone about, maybe they didn't work on the most magnificent award-winning project, but they have a really interesting story and they're really passionate about what they do and they're having a huge impact on their local community. Like those are the conversations I want to have. So I always try to balance of folks that reach out, but I do a lot of my own reach out of I'm targeting people that I want to talk to, that I find interesting, that I see are doing cool work out there. And I think that makes it better rather than, yeah, the big person doing their press junket. I know I listen to all sorts of podcasts, reality TV and all that stuff. And sometimes you'll hear a person go on multiple podcasts and they say the same thing on every single one. And it's like, oh, bummer. So when I have a guest on that has been on a lot of podcasts, I try to listen to as many as I can. And then I go, what did they not talk about? And what can I go, how can I drill in and ask them questions that I haven't heard on anything else? It's like, you already talked about your education. Great. You talked about your first job, but you never talked about this, that, or the other. And I want to hear more about that. So I think that's the fun part of, like you said, having your own platform and really getting to choose who you bring on and what you say and what you talk about.
Absolutely. And I think there's also value in understanding the struggle. Like if you already know the end of the story,
Mhm.
it's so easy to just discount what it took for the person to get there. And even if they tell you, oh, I was fired and I lost everything and I had to start over, you don't fully appreciate how devastating that was because you already know how the story ends. They overcame it and now they're really successful. So I love exploring those moments of truth when you had some kind of huge decision point when something didn't turn out the way you wanted it to, and you had to decide, am I going to keep going? Am I going to pivot? Am I going to give up? And what made you make the decision you did in that moment? Because that's what I think is so interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, can you recall any people that their story at that exact moment like really sticks with you? It comes like, it's top of mind when you think about that.
Yes, so I think the common thread, because I try to ask that sort of question to just about everybody that I interview,
Mhm.
is that they had such a clear sense of their own identity and they knew their why and they were going to do it no matter what. So they may not be doing it the way they thought they were going to do it,
Okay.
but the fact that they didn't take the failure as the clue to give up on or to question the fundamental why of who their identity was built on,
Mhm.
that let them find other channels and find
Mm.
other ways to keep going. One of the early interviews I did in season one was Christina Vernon Sanborn, and she was a healthcare architect. She worked for a local firm in Cleveland. She was very interested in sustainability, one of the first people to get her LEED accreditation. And she was finding that nobody really cared. Nobody really wanted to hear it.
Mm.
She eventually moved to working for the Cleveland Clinic in their department where they have their own architecture team
Mhm.
and continued to talk about this because this was something she was really passionate about. And nobody really knew what to do with it because it was a different way of working and
Mhm.
institutions don't really like to pivot quickly on anything.
Mhm.
But then the movie An Inconvenient Truth came out, and the CEO happened to see that movie and was very touched by it. So he comes into the office and he calls everybody in. He goes, "What are we doing?" And of course, they hadn't really been doing anything at that
Mhm.
point. But she tells the story that, the guy representing the planning and design, architecture group was like,
Yeah.
"But there's this woman who won't shut up."
She's like,
So
it's
she
me.
gets her big break
Yeah.
because the decision gets made that they need to make this a, administrative level department, and
Hmm.
sustainability and resilience needs to be a focus.
Wow.
And guess who gets to be the first person to run that department? Her.
Wow.
And why? Because she just never lost the faith. She never stopped talking about it. She never stopped trying to introduce it.
Hmm.
And if it didn't work, she, well, let me try something different next time. But, she
Yeah.
actually said every no is a not yet. And I love that.
Yeah. It sounds like she was positioning herself too. I mean, not with any intention in mind, but just this is my expertise. This is my interest. Like you said, I'm going to keep talking about it until that opportunity comes up. And then she was poised to take advantage of it, which I think sometimes, I talk to a lot of people too on the podcast, not 300 episodes, but I think we're at 60. Your episode on Monday will be 69. And then we have 14 bonus episodes. So we're in the 90s now. Um, but I think, well, actually, I don't think we're in the 90s, but that's how many I have queued up. So the math live is not my strong suit. But so I think that where am I? I've lost this again. Oh, a lot of people, they talk about, taking advantage of that incredible opportunity that comes up. And sometimes it's luck, but I think a lot of people talk about the preparation that goes behind it. Of if you haven't prepared for that amazing opportunity, when it comes up, it will pass you by. So you just have to prep like it's coming, even if you don't know what it is or when it's coming, so that when it does come, you have your bags packed and you're on the street corner for that train to pick you up.
Absolutely. Because I think, you've heard the saying luck favors the prepared, which is
Mhm.
essentially what you're saying. Because I think if you are not constantly putting resources in the bank of the things you're passionate about, of
Mhm.
your why, then you either don't see the opportunity when it's right there in front of you, because
Mhm.
every day all around us, there are choices we can make, and those choices could put us closer to or further away. But the other thing that can happen is sometimes the opportunity smacks you in the face. But how many people do you know who disqualify themselves then, who
Yeah.
back away, who find the really good reason why they just can't do it right now,
Mhm.
or they find all kinds of flaws in the opportunity that becomes the reason why they can't take it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that way. I'm more of a, I would rather have taken the risk and failed miserably and then know, okay, that wasn't for me. Like even growing up, I did karate for a bit. I played soccer, t-ball. I went, oh, this is not for me. I don't like it. And my parents were amazing of like, great, we'll try something, we can try something else. Um, and so, things that I wasn't suited for, I tried. And if I didn't have fun and if I wasn't enjoying it, then I would try something else. And it's like, maybe I'm a quitter, but there's so many things to do in this world. Why fill it with things that you don't love and you're not excited by? So I think the same is with when you're thinking about professional advancement with those opportunities too. Maybe you speak at an event or you go to a networking session or you join a board or you volunteer somewhere. It might not be the best thing and you might not go back to, I don't know, maybe the AIA isn't for you or maybe crew isn't for you or ULI or something, but something else is. And then that becomes your community and you go to those events and that will help get you to whatever that next level is. But if you didn't try out those events, you wouldn't have known that you were really suited for that versus something else.
Yeah, or even just knowing what isn't for you helps you know what is. You know,
Yeah.
we need sometimes the contrast to be able to get the clarity.
Hmm. Yeah. Is there anything that you've tried in your career where you go, oh, not for me?
So early in my career, I worked for a very, very small firm. And so within 6 months, I was project manager and I was managing 5 and 6 projects because they were very small projects. It was good experience. So the next firm I went to, I aspired to that role. I was actually a project architect at that firm. We worked on bigger projects.
Mhm.
And then when I relocated to Cleveland, then it was, okay, we'll make you a project manager on some projects, but not the bigger projects. And what I very quickly realized the minute the scale of the project got bigger was I hated being a project manager.
Oh, wow.
So at my little tiny firm, I was the project manager, but I was also the project architect, the designer, right? I mean, I didn't have a whole team of people, so I was playing all the parts.
Hmm.
And I was working on projects that required heavy consultant coordination and usually involved either use permit or rezoning. So I was like the real estate agent, the lawyer, I got to do a lot of things that were really great experiences. So
Yes.
that shaped what I thought project management was. And
Hmm.
at most firms, when you think about how projects are structured, the project manager runs the project. So it's viewed as the top role you could have. Well, what I realized was that when you are actually working on bigger projects, you don't get to do design anymore
Hmm.
because you're doing all this administrative stuff. And that administrative stuff is so time consuming that the things that, at least for me, like why I want to be an architect, I wasn't getting to do.
Yeah.
I was having to, have teams do it, but I wanted to do some of that stuff.
Hmm.
And actually, when I interviewed for the job that I have now at GBBN, they were looking for a project manager, and a recruiter reached out to me. And in the interview, I just flat out said, I don't want to be a project manager. This is what I want to do.
Hmm.
And I had gotten to the point where I was going to interview a firm as much as they were going to interview me. And I realized that there wasn't a lot of value in not being super clear about exactly what I wanted. And then you can talk about it. Is that something that they are willing to let you do or not?
Hmm.
And, go from there. So I really had my eyes opened
Hmm.
that what I thought I wanted, what I thought was the promotion, the top position, I don't want that.
Mm. And so you're a principal now, right? So how are you doing more project management now, or are you still kind of in the nitty-gritty of projects?
No, so I'm called a medical planner.
Okay.
That can mean a lot of different things, but for me, because I
Hmm.
very much have kind of my own way of doing things, shock. But for me, it means I'm doing a lot of research. I get involved in marketing. I get involved with a lot of the story of the project. I actually really enjoy working with user groups and
Okay.
facilitating people understanding the problem
Hmm.
and even doing the on-site research to uncover the real pain points that they have
Yeah.
and doing the initial planning and design stuff. I usually don't work on a project past about halfway through DD
Okay.
because at that point other people take over. And there's good things and bad things about that because I actually love interior design, and when I worked at the firm I worked for before this, I did do all my own interior design, and I loved choosing finishes and colors and lighting because that's all part of the environment. And that's what I love, right?
Yeah.
Getting to create this sort of ecosystem for people. So, I think sometimes you have to make a decision of what do I love to do? And
Hmm.
that's going to determine the size of the firm you work for, but also the role that you want to play because ultimately you can't do everything and you only have so much bandwidth.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that's a great way of thinking about advancing your career of just because you see the ladder doesn't mean you have to climb it in that exact way. And if there's something that even as you get more senior in your career, but you want to hold on to, like there are spaces out there. So interesting. So you're doing more of like, I guess you're more of like a subject matter expert at the
Yeah.
firm. Yeah. With deep expertise and leadership there versus like we're worrying about staffing and the, invoices and all of that, which those are important roles to have
Oh, yeah.
too. At the firm in terms of managing all the people and then also all of the, everything coming in and
Yeah.
out at the firm.
I think the minute you choose to specialize, whatever it is, you realize how valuable your team is. That
Mhm.
you cannot do this project by yourself, and you're not any more or less important than the other team members because you each have things you are contributing. So you have to trust them, but they also have your back.
Mhm. Yeah, that's very true. The team is everything. Mhm. I don't know if anyone, I guess we like didn't throw to the audience, or I don't know how exactly to check that if that's something we click on YouTube.
I'm not seeing comments, but that's okay. Um,
I just wanted to make sure we check into it just in case someone was like, "Oh, hello."
yeah, there's not any comments, but that's
Mhm.
okay. I think what we were just, hopefully you will find this
Mhm.
after the fact and listen
Yes,
in
we'll
and
share it. We'll share
definitely
it.
let us know your thoughts because
Mhm.
what's different, I think, from what you'll hear when you hear our podcast interviews is
Mhm.
that those really truly are a let's learn about you and what you're all about. Whereas this is more us just dishing about topics that we think are worth talking about.
Mhm.
So it's very informal, very off the cuff, but hopefully it's a fun way to interact and to think about things that maybe have been bothering you, but you didn't know how to talk about, or
Mhm.
things you didn't realize about the profession, or even getting a little behind the scenes of how we do our podcasts.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah, all the technical trials and
Yeah,
the behind the scenes of podcasting. But yeah, I think this was really great. It's almost like we were having lunch or something together, right? Just chit-chatting, and then people will be able to stream this later. So
yeah,
but I think, yeah, Angela, when we did our interviews, it's, you interview people and sometimes you get along really well, sometimes it's a little bit more formal or stiff, but I feel like we were chatting and it's like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I've known you for such a long time. You're just so easy to talk to." And I think your perspectives are so insightful. And so I am a big fan. Maybe like about 590 of those 600 downloads probably could have been me because I've worked my way through a lot of your episodes. So I definitely encourage people, if you haven't heard those episodes, tune in because there's a lot of heart and spirit in there. And I think you have a lot of wisdom and I appreciate you sharing it with everyone.
you. Yeah, I have one. It's actually going to come out early tomorrow,
Okay.
where I interviewed a man who's been in practice. He's also written a couple books about the state of the profession, and he teaches at Arizona State. But he's got some very interesting insights on looking at our profession over like a 100-year span almost.
Ooh, okay.
What the hell happened to us? Because, if you go back, the
Hmm.
architect was the client's touchstone. The
Hmm.
architect ran the project. The architect was in charge. And of course, over time, we see that the way the architect interfaces with the owner has changed as CMs have come in and project managers have come in and owners have created their levels of in-house project management and design teams. We also see pressure from other parts of the industry, like what are contractors trying to do without architects? What are interior designers doing that also overlaps a lot with what architects do? And he has just some really great insights. So some of the things we've touched on now, you definitely want to hear tomorrow's episode because I think Bo had a lot to say on that that is really kind of thought provoking.
Oh, I can't wait to hear that. I know, yeah, architecture, I've put a couple sessions together for students, and it really started out as this. I'm very wealthy. I am a patron of the arts. I can deliver this type of project to clients. And it was really just like a funnel of very wealthy people who were able to become architects. And then they had a lot of connections socially to people who were hiring architects or were funding new building projects. So it's interesting, yeah, how it's kind of turned over time, and architects are no longer, in my opinion, the top of the food chain in terms of fees, especially, or sometimes even in terms of prestige. It's like the contractor is like we're the trusted source, and the architect is. I hate being painted as like the oh, just they just want to spend money. Their ideas are outlandish, and it's like I pride myself on doing those, as we talked about, those like retrofit, like how can we be as economical, sustainable as possible within the budget and be really creative with things and not to do things to excess. So I hate that sometimes contractors are like, oh, she's just silly. And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm
It's
not, but
there's just this dynamic. One of the sessions I went to at the last conference I was at
Mhm.
that I thought was one of the best sessions I've ever gone to. It had nothing to do with healthcare architecture,
Okay.
but it was about the dynamic of how a large project works.
Mm.
And we've all been there, right? We feel like we've got a great relationship with the client through design when we are the primary person working with them, and then it starts construction and our role is minimized.
Mhm.
But now the contractors who the owner is seeing all the time, and sometimes things are not, the most, let's say, they can get a little toxic.
Mhm.
Um, and this project, I give a lot of credit to the contractor, the owner, and the architect team because they knew it was going to be a project that took like 10 years to build, so a very
Wow.
long haul. They
Mhm.
hired a private consultant to work with them. And this woman is embedded with their team. So I would, there's some kind of training about being a good listener and
Wow.
bias and all that.
Mhm.
But she actually attends all of the construction meetings and then she gives them a debrief like, you shouldn't have said that, or you
Wow.
implied this or that. And
Mhm.
they were kind enough to share in the session that they had done this workshop where every person coming from a variety of roles had to say what they thought about the other people. And
Oh,
so it was really interesting, like the owner saying, well, I don't trust the contractor because he doesn't tell me what's going on. And the
wow.
contractor saying, you're micromanaging me. I can take care of things. And the architect saying, this is supposed to be a three-legged stool, but you're sawing our leg off. We are not getting fair representation.
Yeah.
And just saying that out loud versus resenting people and you're having these conversations in private but you're not telling the person
Yeah.
like what that does for the team dynamics when you actually say it and then you're consciously trying to work better and communicate better. So I love that session. And I
Mhm.
think that if we did more of that, we might start to turn a corner here in seeing everybody has value and not working together versus trying to defer blame.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no benefit to assigning blame or animosity. I think I always try to be as respectful and as upbeat as possible as a team leader, right? And as if you bring toxicity in, that's going to permeate through the whole team. So if I see it spreading somewhere, I'm always like, listen, we're adults and we need to treat each other like adults and we're just doing our jobs, right? And we all have like at the end of the day, we want this project to get built, but we go home to our families and we're people. And I think sometimes when we interact with each other digitally so much, we forget that we all are people. We have good days, we have bad days. And so, yeah, I'm always just like, I think that baseline of respect is so important on projects. And then if emails are getting a little saucy or sassy between the teams, it's pick up the phone. And that I think kind of like podcasting, right? Like you can convey so much to people based off your tone of voice, and you can add a little bit of a flair in or something like that. I think same with the phone. Picking it up to solve a problem of like, hey, I'm seeing these crazy emails go back and forth. Let's just hop on a call and like discuss it. And we'll pull everyone on. I feel like that's always as I lead more and more teams with more and more personalities, you always deal with a different group of people. The phone call is the tried and true way to sort through some of that muck.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we often just hide, and mutter under our breath. So, yeah, I think continuing to talk about this is only good for everybody because we can't really always recognize some of the culture we're steeped in because we're in it. And if we don't talk about it, we don't realize like it's really kind of effed up. We should not be doing that.
Yep. Yep, I agree.
What are we thinking here?
Yeah, if you're questioning it, then it shouldn't be acceptable. You gotta say something about it. Like, listen, we don't. I mean, I've been on calls where they're like, okay, gentlemen, like, good to have you all on. And I'm go, and ladies, like, and lady, I'm on here too. I always try to say something, call it out of like the, microaggressions against women or things like that. It's like they do matter. And like, even if I have tough skin, like, if I were bringing an intern with me, I would want to set that tone of like, I'm not like, you're coming after me. I need to make it better for the people that are more junior to me that are coming up into the profession. So, um, and not just gender, but all sorts of different, different things that people say at different times. So we gotta, if you care about people, you gotta speak up and make those rooms hospitable.
For sure. So speaking up is what we're trying to do both on our
Mhm.
podcast and with this live. So this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to encourage people, put something in the comments. Let us know what you thought. Let us know topics you'd like us to talk
Mhm.
about. And based on that, we'll try to schedule another one of these sometime soon.
Excellent. And we'll see you on our podcast platforms. Architectette, I'll just do a plug. Sorry, Angela. Architectette, it's a podcast on Spotify, Apple, anywhere you get podcasts, on Instagram at Architectette. That's Architect ETTE. And then we're also on LinkedIn. You can join our group there. And Monday's episode, October 6th, 2025. If you're listening to this in the future, it will be, hopefully they're still on the platforms. You can download them. So Angela's episode will be airing. So that is a can't miss.
Yeah. And Caitlin's episode will be airing next Thursday, which is, boy, now I have to look because if you think
The
I
9th.
remember
I think so.
dates, I have another thing coming, but it is October 9th.
Yep. I have a site visit that day. So it's on my schedule.
There we go. But yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun so you'll want to listen to those episodes
Yep.
and listen to them in succession.